Alright, so the last tool we're going to talk about are scrapers. I'm going to use a card scraper to demonstrate, but the techniques for honing can be adapted to cabinet scrapers like the Stanley number 80 or scraper planes like a number 85 or a 212. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that a scraper is a simple tool and doesn't need to be honed like a plane iron or a chisel does. I thought this way myself for a long time until I actually tried honing one. And I've been honing them ever since. I really think a lot differently about scrapers these days. And consider this, a scraper, just like your best smoothing plane, is really a finishing tool meant for leaving a final surface ready for finish. So with that in mind, ask yourself, would you use your best smoothing plane with your iron straight from the grinder? Well, scraper is no different. If you use this scraper straight from the file, that edge has little micro serrations in it, and that edge isn't going to hold up very well and cut very smoothly. However, hone those edges and you get a stronger edge that cuts cleaner and lasts longer.
As with any other edge tool, the sharpest edge is obtained by honing the two adjacent faces to a high polish. With a scraper, that means the face and the narrow edge. However, with a card scraper, we actually have two faces and an edge, so we need to hone both of these faces. And I do so just as I would with a plane iron or chisel, honing on progressively finer abrasives with pressure right over the edge until I have the desired level of polish on both faces.
Alright, now with about a ½ inch or so of each side of the two faces polished up through my finest stone, I turn my attention to working the edge. Now, just like grinding a plane iron, the first step of sharpening a scraper is shaping. We do this with a file, and it's called jointing, exactly the same as when we file a saw. So just as in the saw filing episode, I'm going to use my 6-inch mill file and my guide block to file the edge of the scraper straight and square. And a helpful aid here is actually just to color the edge of the scraper with a Sharpie or permanent marker, and just file until all of the marker is gone. And usually it only takes 1 or 2 passes or so if your scraper is in decent shape, and you just file and joint that edge until your edge is nice and square, and you can do it from both sides if you want. And once the edge is square and all the marker is gone, you're done jointing. Now, once the joining is done, as indicated by the marker being completely filed away, I hone the edges just as I did the faces. And I use the square block to actually guide the scraper as I hone, and I constantly turn and move the block around, and this just helps to avoid grooving the stone as I hone the scraper. And I continue honing the scraper until all the scratches from the first stone are gone, and then I move up to this polishing stone, and again you can color the edge with a marker to kind of help yourself out, and then you just hone until all the marker is gone. And once all the marker is gone and you've done through your finest stone, you can move on to the burnishing. Now, the purpose of burnishing is really just to deform the edge of the scraper slightly and form a hook on the edge of it, which actually does the cutting. Now, I use a purpose-made burnisher. It's just a smooth, highly polished piece of steel, and the burnisher steel itself is harder than the scraper steel, which allows it to deform the shaper. And they come in a lot of different shapes, so just choose one that you like the best. I've only ever used this round one, so it's really the only one I have an opinion on, and it seems to work fine for me, so I can't really offer up opinions on any other shapes. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is what a lot of the references would call drawing the burr. Now, I don't know if it actually makes a difference to do this step or not. It's just the way that I've learned and the way that I've always done it. So, if you want to find out for yourself if it's necessary, try drawing the burr first before you turn it, and then try it not drawing the burr first before you turn it, and see if you notice a difference. Again, I've always done it this way. It's just the way that I learned to do it, so I've never seen a need to change because it's always worked for me. So I just put the scraper on the edge of the bench. I put a drop of oil on it just to lubricate it, and I'm going to run the burnisher flat along the edge several times, maybe a dozen or so times. Not a whole lot of pressure. And the theory is that this may work harden the steel, may begin to deform the edge. And I'll do both sides. There's enough oil on the burnisher that I don't have to put any more on. And again, feel free to draw your own conclusions as to whether or not this is a necessary step or not. Okay, once I've drawn the burr, then I need to go ahead and turn the burr or form that hook on the side of the scraper that's actually going to do the cutting. So I put another, just put a drop of oil, again, just to lubricate and keep the burnisher from galling the steel. And again, now I'm going to just hold this in my hand to do this. This is typically how I would do this. And I hold the burnisher at a slight angle to the scraper. And again, I'm going to run it, maybe a dozen times. And I'm not using a lot of pressure here. I think one of the mistakes a lot of folks make is they use way too much pressure and get way too aggressive of a hook, and then they have a lot of trouble using the scraper so that it'll chatter and jump and skitter across the surface instead of slicing a nice shaving. To describe how much pressure I use, I would say maybe, like I would use writing with a mechanical pencil. Enough pressure to make a mark on the paper, but not so much that I'm breaking the lead all the time. So again, maybe a dozen times or so on this side to turn the hook on the other side. And I typically only use the 4 long corners. I don't really mess with these short corners. And I'll do this a dozen or so times until I can feel that I have a nice consistent hook. And I have no idea what the angle is that I'm holding the burnisher. I really never bothered to measure it. I really haven't found that it makes a whole lot of difference. Again, that's just me. Feel free to experiment and draw your own conclusions. Once you have a burr consistently all along both edges, you should be able to feel it on all 4 edges. Then you're done. All that's left to do is take it for a test drive. So there you go. As you can see, a properly sharpened scraper should generate actual shavings, not dust. If you're throwing dust instead of shavings, then that scraper's not sharp. But properly sharpened scraper should give you nice fluffy shavings that almost fall apart when you pick them up.